Presentation will be around 12 minutes long with 2-3 minutes of extra time period. And now, to gauge the interest of our audience, we are posting a poll and you have 30 seconds to answer the poll. So Manali, if you can open the poll. Okay. So moving on. So it is with immense pleasure that we introduce our distinguished speakers and panelists who kindly agreed to participate in this webinar and share their wisdom about academia to industry transition. So I would like to welcome Dr. Vidhi Khanna from Biocon BMS, Dr. Ramaswamy Subramanian from Purdue University, Dr. Mrinalini Puranik from Shell, Dr. Gautam Das from MyBiome Therapeutics, Mr. Himanshu Singh from Forrester Research, and Dr. Atanu Singh Gupta from Dr. Reddy's laboratory. So we would like to start with our first presentation by Dr. Vidhi Khanna. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Khanna, who is currently working as a research investigator at Biocon Bristol Myers Squibb Research Center in Bangalore. She obtained her MS and PhD in pharmaceutics from University of Minnesota. And prior to joining graduate school, Dr. Khanna interned in pharmaceutical companies, Cipla and IPCA laboratories. And during her PhD studies, Dr. Khanna did a summer internship in analytical sciences at another biotechnology firm, Seagen in Washington. So she'll be providing us insights on how to tailor your CV for applying to an industrial R&D job and work responsibilities as a new recruit. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Khanna. And Dr. Khanna, if you can share your slides.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. I think you
Okay, perfect.
Pull up your slides right now.
Sure. First of all, of course, thank you for having me over here. I feel very privileged to be a part of such an experienced panel. So I must preface this by saying that I'm probably the least experienced in this panel. And I only joined the industry about one and a half year ago. So I'll share the little bit of information that I can, but mostly I think I'll also be learning as much as any of the participants here from this seminar. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so just quickly going over my career path. So I did my Bachelor of Pharmacy from the Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai, where I did 3 internships actually. I did one at Cipla, the other one at IPA, both in formulation R&Ds. And then a third one is with online science portal called India Bioscience, because I just wanted to dabble a little bit into scientific communication and see what that's all about. After my B Pharm, I moved to the US to pursue my MS in pharmaceutics at the University of Minnesota. My MS was mostly based in nanotechnology for cancer therapy. After my MS, I decided to stay on at the University of Minnesota for a PhD in the same lab. And during my PhD, I interned with Seattle Genetics, which is a biotechnology-based firm based out of Seattle, Washington. My PhD was based in monoclonal antibodies and immuno-oncology. After that, basically right away, I moved back to India and I joined BBRC, or the Biocon Bristol Myers Squibb Research Center, which is based in Bangalore, as a research investigator. And now I work here as a research investigator in discovery immuno-oncology. So basically at the very, very early stages of drug development. So we can go to the next slide. So I'm not going to talk too much. I'd rather have a discussion at the end, but I'll just go through a few questions that the organizers asked me to address, and also that I felt would be useful to you all. So why India? I moved to India because of family reasons. My husband, now husband, then boyfriend, he was in India, and he never wanted to move to the US. So it was always very clear to me at some point I'd have to make that decision. So during my PhD, I think when I was in my third or fourth year, I decided that I'm going to move back to India for sure, because one of us needed to make that decision, and I thought, why not? I'll also be closer to family, so it's good for me too. So I decided to move back immediately after my PhD, because I was like, if I'm going to move back, I might as well move back right away. I didn't want to start working over there and then move back. I thought that transition would just be harder then. So that's the reason I moved back. How did I start looking for opportunities when I moved back to India? Well, I looked for opportunities like most people do via LinkedIn. I started reaching out to researchers at different industry positions, and sort of sending out feelers that, hey, I'm looking for a job, I'm planning to move back. And I'd say this was about 6 months before I actually moved back. So I just so, like, do you have any positions? Do you think you know anybody who would have any positions for me? Aside from people in the industry, I also reached out to my alumni from the Institute of Chemical Technology, as well as alumni from the University of Minnesota. And again, just sending out feelers that, I'm looking for something in India. If you know of anything, let me know. And this can include even faculty who are at faculty positions, because they're often very well connected. So actually, one of them really did help me out. So yeah, basically LinkedIn, and of course, side by side, I was applying or just uploading my CV on industry websites. But we all know that that's not the most efficient way of applying for jobs. Okay, while looking, just a couple of things to keep in mind. Your network becomes of utmost importance when you're looking for opportunities in the industry or even in academia. uh, I cannot emphasize how important your network is. The job that I have at BBRC today is only and only because of my network. And it was not just like one alumni. It was my alumni at ICT, my alumni at University of Minnesota, as well as colleagues at the University of Minnesota who really helped me get connected with people at BBRC. So yeah, your network, I cannot emphasize how important that it can be. Uh, that is probably the whole and sole reason why I got the BBRC job. In terms of work options, knew of a few options when I was looking to transition, and I'm sure the rest of the panel can provide more insight to this. The few options that I knew of were, of course, in discovery biology, or generally in drug discovery. Those kinds of jobs are more exploratory based, so you have more of a free hand. But then the downside is that it can take several years for you to see any results. Then the other type of jobs are CRO based jobs where it's repeated. I shouldn't say repeated. It's structured or specifically designed projects and short-term goals, timeline-driven goals for research. You have less of a free hand, but you see results faster. The other kinds of jobs are, of course, in science communication, where you can get involved in communicating science to layman people, or just getting involved in hardcore editing of manuscripts for people who need that kind of help. And the last set of jobs that I knew about, but I'm not very insightful about them, are in terms of regulatory work. So of course, this is not bench work. This is off the bench work. Again, I don't have too much insight into them, but I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who could help you out if you need to look into such jobs. Um, in terms of tailoring your CV, I think most of us understand how to make a CV at this point, but just one thing I personally, this is a personal recommendation and you may take it, you may not take it. Even if an industry job mentions CV, which could actually be 4 to 5 pages long and very has a lot of information. It's very information dense. I would always submit my resume. The difference, of course, between a CV versus a resume is a resume is much shorter, often restricted to just 1 page, and that's it. So even if they asked for a CV, I would always submit a resume because personally, I feel like nobody in the industry has the time to go through a resume, especially not someone in HR who may or may not entirely understand what the job profile is. So that's one thing. The other thing is tailoring it specifically for the job. Now, your skill set is what it is, right? But if you're applying for a specific job, you can tweak your resume as per that job. One very simple thing is, like, for example, there's a job that's looking specifically for flow cytometry skills. You want to highlight those flow cytometry skills now if you have them, right? So you want to mention them maybe right at the top in your research summary, or maybe even 2 or 3 times, so that a robot who you have submitted your resume to picks it up, or even a person in HR again who may not understand can pick it up. So it's important to tweak your resume just a little bit to make sure that the skills that make you valuable for that job are noticed. In terms of interview prep, I'll just say one thing over here, that the industry is more interested in your skill set and not the end goal of your project. Example, you did a research project and that a certain protein is extremely important in a particular type of cancer. The industry people wouldn't really care about this particular protein and how important it is. They'll be more interested in how you got to that hypothesis, what experiments you used to get to the to go through that hypothesis, and what was your thought process. What did you learn from it? So showcase your skills in the interview more than you showcase your project. Simply put. Okay, now in terms of the research, in terms of my colleagues and work culture in India, I'll speak, of course, specifically for BBRC because that's the only experience that I've had. In terms of research, honestly, I was pleasantly surprised at BBRC. BBRC has some fantastic research facilities. They are at par with some of the most esteemed research institutions in the US. And I personally did not expect that. I was absolutely impressed. So if you're coming to India thinking that, oh, maybe India doesn't have those kind of research facilities, absolutely do not worry. India has some of the best research facilities. There is a reason India has become a hub for CROs from all over the world, right? All over the world, there are companies that reach out to India to get their work done. There is a reason for that. In terms of my colleagues, again, I was extremely impressed by the research environment, by my colleagues, by the scientific rigor that exists at BBRC. The research that goes on here is top notch. And once again, it can rival some of the best institutions abroad. So you do not need to worry about the kind of research that goes on in India. It is absolutely cutting edge. And believe me, I learn something every day and I'm still learning. And I think I'll be learning for the next 2 or 3 years, at least, if not more. Okay, and the last part is the work culture. And now, the work culture is where I think the main difference comes in. The work culture is not the same as it would be in the US. India is not, the work culture in India is not as casual as it is in the US. And that could be a little difficult to adapt to. But then again, I think that's the only thing that you need to adapt to, really. So you win some, you lose some. If you come with that mindset, looking for another US, as you would say, like looking for the same thing, then you're going to be disappointed. So I think if you temper your expectations just a little bit, you'll be perfectly okay. Uh, In terms of what my job profile entails, I joined the industry as a fresher, right? Just right out of my PhD. So for me, my job profile is pretty much a 50-50 split. 50% bench work and 50% of my time is spent in literature reading, making presentations, or small administrative work, if any. Um, I would imagine anybody joining the industry as a fresher, whether you're coming from a PhD, postdoc, uh, you'd pretty much have a similar job profile if you're getting into research, that is. It would be a pretty even 50-50 split. But if you have more experience in the industry, I would imagine that split would be more like 70-30, where you're spending 70% of your time doing literature reading and making presentations, etc. Whereas 30% of your time could be spent on bench work. So that's again, it heavily depends on your job profile and what kind of organization you're getting into. So
Dr.
yeah,
Vicky,
that's all
just one more. Oh, okay. Almost done. Okay.
yeah, that's all from my end. So yeah, I'll take any questions whenever they are permitted.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Khanna, for an excellent introductory talk and sharing your journey from academia to finding a job in Indian industry, and especially emphasizing the importance of networking. So moving to our next speaker, Dr. Gautam Das. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gautam Das, who is the co-founder and managing partner of MyBiome Therapeutics. He obtained his PhD at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and worked at UMass Medical School as a postdoctoral research associate. Dr. Das later transitioned to several pharma and biotech industries, undertaking diverse leadership roles, including Assistant Vice President and Head of Biomaterials Research at Reliance Industries Limited in Mumbai. So in his talk, he'll be focusing on the additional skill sets one should work on during a PhD or a postdoc for a smoother transition from academia to industry, and also the whole interviewing process. I'm really excited to hear about his journey of also building his own startup company. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Das. So Dr. Das, if you can please share your PowerPoint. The floor is yours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Madhu. Thanks, organizers of Sci-ROI, for this very nice platform. And I'm personally attached to this kinds of platform, and I'll tell you why in the forthcoming slides. So the title, as the organizers suggested, is Moving to Industry. And in my specific case, I'll tell about my journey, my experiences, and these are all personal experiences from my corporate career over 7 years. And then that's after my postdoc. And then last 1.5 years has been a very exciting journey of co-founding a startup, and I'll share my experiences of that too. So yeah, the journey, as Madhu introduced, started with a PhD at IISc Bangalore, and that was on molecular microbiology. I was in the microbiology and cell biology department with Professor Umesh Vashne, and I enjoyed the days at IISc. I mean, anybody who has been to IISc loved the campus, loved the environment, the science that goes on. It's all exciting. And right after PhD, I moved to the US at UMass Medical School, and there I did my postdoc. It was quite a diverse lab, working on Drosophila, human cells, and even to the extent of going to patients. So we would discover things in Drosophila and then go on to actual patients' cancer in cancer biology. So that was a nice experience at UMass. And then I moved back to Reliance Industries here in Mumbai. And there I was working on several aspects. And Reliance, I don't know how much of you guys know about Reliance. The conglomerate is big, and their research investment is also quite big, and not much of it is advertised online. So they have a very big research center in Mumbai, wherein synthetic biology, renewable energy, and many, many areas of interesting modern biology studied at a very advanced level. And the interesting thing is they also do commercialization, and the our production plants, that is the translation of the research, happens in Gujarat. So that's my experience at Reliance. And then I decided to, I've been thinking about it for a long time. So I decided to uh, do my own startup. And that was in 2019, end of 2019, wherein I started my startup. It's called My Biome Therapeutics. So we deal with mainly genomics currently. The bigger goal is, of course, products in the future. Right now, we deal with genomics as a service and genomics in research. So we have our research programs, which I'll tell at the end, and we do genomics as a service for pharmaceutical companies, academia in India and US, Europe, and then hospitals, clinicians, whoever, cancer biologists, whoever wants genomics to support their either their clinical practice or hospital if they are interested in clinical research or academic lab. So that's about my journey in short. From the last few years. And yeah, as I was mentioning, this particular platform, I have a personal attachment. As some of you might be knowing, there's a parallel platform called Young Investigator Meeting in Boston. And I'm proud to say that I returned to India because of this platform called YIM Boston, and Reliance Industries was interviewing there, and I was selected by the organizers of YIM, and things changed. I mean, I was not planning to return that soon. I was planning to stay longer, but the opportunity, the vision that Reliance presented at the YIM meeting, and they met those expectations. It was a huge R&D investment that they were making at that time on renewable energy and synthetic biology. And I was fortunate to be selected, and I returned back to Reliance Industries. And Sci-ROI, as I see, is a platform exactly fitting those ideals. And I'm very excited to participate, not just today, but in your journey in the future. Uh, yeah, the organizers asked me to introduce something on the interview. How should the interview be prepared? What to prepare? What not to do? So I have put down again. These are my personal thoughts. What you should do first is read about the company. I know many people might ignore this, but it is very important. I mean, in conversation with the interviewer, you'll see that how important it is. You should know the company very, very thoroughly. I would suggest that to be number one. And you focus on your diverse academic technical skills relevant for the industry. You need not talk about everything, but you talk about the things that are relevant to the industry. There are things that are relevant to academia and things that are relevant to the industry. So be ready with examples wherein you have displayed leadership anywhere. It could be a science club or a postdoctoral association, anywhere wherein you have displayed leadership, because leadership as you grow in the industrial career is very, very important. If you have any patents, do talk about them. It's very important, and I did, and I'm sharing my personal experiences. Pay a lot of attention to communication skills, and as you will see, moving to industry, communication skills is an integral part of everyday life. Like you will deal with big teams of, like I was dealing with people, 50 people, a team of 50 people at Reliance, and dealing with everything needs the best communication skills. So one needs to sharpen those skills right from the beginning. Uh, while interviewing, I would suggest that you don't stick only to the basic science, as someone pointed out in the beginning, that it could be a very, very exciting research that you have done. But if the basic science only is projected, that's not enough. You have to also emphasize on the commercial and the translation aspects of it. So don't overemphasize, I would say, on the impact factor citations of your journals, but stick to the commercialization and the translation aspects. And every research can have a translation angle. And believe me, like you can have a translation angle to any basic research, and that's how it grows. And do not underestimate the need for scientific rigor. I mean, industry science, I know there are some myths, but as academic science, industrial research needs the same rigor because it's finally a product, a commercial product, a translation product. So these are my thoughts. And during PhD and postdoc days, I would suggest everyone, all of you who are aspiring to move to industry, to network. I mean, there's no substitute to this. All of you should initiate new activities and gain leadership skills early on. PhD rotation labs should be diverse. Business knowledge, many of us discuss about this. It's a plus to have, but not mandatory, because at the initial stages, what the industry is looking for is very good scientists. And then later on, the business skills become important as you get involved in commercial projects. So apart from the basic science, always think about commercial avenues of science. Learn from your collaborations. All of these aspects like project management, timelines, milestones, deliverables, expectations, everything can be learned from your postdoc or PhD days wherein you have handled collaborations. It's a very nice learning that you can do right early on. Learn people management skills. So take up mentorship roles to young PhD students, master students, and all these learnings actually help you in industry. Attend conferences, career fairs like Sci-ROI, YIM Boston, etc. Meet relevant people. In conferences, one of the experiences for me is stay in hotel booking, like stay with people and as much do networking as much as possible. It always helps. Be on the lookout for career opportunities over coffee, lunch, parties, everywhere. Networking is that important. And you should be the best brand ambassador to talk about your science anywhere you go. That's why I said communication skills is very, very important. Uh, Now, coming to my own journey of launching my own startup here, uh, as all of you know, and the organizers asked me to share something on this. It's a very tough journey to leave a corporate job and come to start something on your own. And I'm very happy to share that today we have a team of 12 scientists, all trained in top institutes like IIT, ISC, AIMS, etc. And it is possible to do things in India. All you need to overcome first is the fear of unknown. That's all in the mind. And if you overcome that, half job is done. Uh, I can suggest that you can have less passion and stability of a job, but if you have complete passion and ready to take that highest risk, this choice is yours. So you should make a business plan, path to commercialization, and return of investment. Whoever is investing needs the return on investment. Funding, there's good funding in India from the government and the private sector, grants, accelerators. There are very good incubators in India, and you have to make the founding team very, very strong, and it has to be built on very, very strong science. The ideas have to have a commercial value near term, and you can start with few ideas to start with, and this is again my personal thought, because the investment is always limited. So you can start on few ideas but do very high quality science. And at the end, one personal thing I would like to share is, yes, family support is important. It's not easy to leave a job and start your own startup. So fortunately, I had that. Uh, so this is our company. Very briefly, I would go. We do infection control genomics. We do cancer genomics, reproductive genomics, rare disease genomics, immunogenomics, and we do gut microbiome genomics. And this is just to share with all attendees about my own journey in startup over the last 1.5 years, and what we have built here is these research areas that we have been focusing very strongly, and you can check our website. We are very active in all these areas. And apart from that, revenue stream for any startup company or any other company is important. So we do services in genomics, and towards this we do DNA-based RNA-seq, metagenomics, epigenetics, and computation biology, and the whole analytics, data science, AI, ML is becoming a integral part of biology too. And we are, I'm happy to share that we have a strong team of 4 people who are trained in software engineering, computer engineering, and now over the last year, the biology they speak, you'll not believe. I mean, that's the way integration of different interdisciplinary people can happen. And today we work with software engineers, PhD bioinformatics to make new pipelines specifically made tailor-made for Indian data in genomics, be it cancer, infectious disease, recently COVID, and microbiome, and many, many other areas. So please feel free to connect with me anytime. And this is our company. And thank you all. This is our email, and please feel free to connect.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for sharing your experience about the application process, casting light on the additional skills required to be successful in industry, and really an inspiring story for our audience about your startup. So Sci-ROI wishes you all the best. Thanks again. And with this, I would like to start, welcome our next speaker, Dr. Mrinalini Puranik, yet another alumna from IISc Bangalore. Dr. Puranik worked as a postdoctoral research associate at Princeton University and Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry, Germany. Max Planck Institute and the University of Göttingen in Germany are known for its excellence in science and producing about 40 Nobel laureates. Dr. Puranik later obtained her MBA while working as an associate professor of physical chemistry at IISER Pune. She currently leads a diverse R&D team to enhance global digitization solutions at Shell, India. She'll be focusing on the major differences between the research environment in academia versus industry, perhaps cast some light on how an MBA helps one in in planning this move, and what one should prioritize while changing career paths. So please welcome Dr. Puranik. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'll share my screen. Please let me know when you can see the slides.
Dr. Puranik, if you could lower your laptop screen a little bit, your face will be fully visible. Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, because I can't see it. So you had given me a bunch of questions, and what I thought I would do is show my journey while I also address some of the questions you asked. So I did my PhD, like you said, at the Indian Institute of Science, and there I was studying photophysics, computational chemistry, as usual, published some papers. And then during my PhD already, I found that there was an opportunity to interact with Unilever because they were sponsoring a small program to go to Groningen as an exchange student. So I had to write a grant, and it was funded by 2 or 3 different places. And that was my first interaction with industry already. And they funded me for a 3-month visit, and that was also very fruitful because it gave me a connection to a team which was developing a new computational chemistry code. I was doing an experimental PhD, I had lots of data, and this gave me an opportunity to be embedded in a computational group and start modeling that data. So from there, then when I finished my PhD, I went to Princeton, and I had always been interested in doing biology in some form or the other. But my basic degrees were in physics and math, and my PhD was in a chemistry department. So I applied for postdoc at Princeton in a biochemistry lab. And there I became interested in many sorts of biological questions and looking essentially at protein structure. And then after a couple of years of postdoc, I came back to India, started to the National Center for Biological Sciences as a faculty member. And I began working then in primarily looking at all sorts of biological questions, looking at proteins that were involved in as identified as malarial therapeutic targets, looking at aspects of DNA repair, nucleobases and their structure and dynamics, and then also at the human pigment melanin. So you can already see from the type of questions I was looking at in academia that I was interested in very diverse set of problems. And that was already a slight misfit in terms of how academics works. You have to be very deeply interested in one problem and work at it for several years. But I used to get excited by whatever other people were doing. And I didn't really have, only one question that I wanted to address for a very long time. I was interested always in what others were doing as well. So that, I think, is the seed of what indicates to you that you might in industry as well, being interested in what others are doing. So I've just put my NCBS and ISER Pune years together here. From NCBS, after 7 years as a faculty member at NCBS, I moved to ISER Pune. ISER Pune was just starting up at that time, and they were looking for some senior faculty to join. They had invited 9 other people in my area, and they were seeding a program around spectroscopy, light probing techniques and so on. So ISER Pune was a very exciting journey. I was a little worried because it involved undergraduate teaching, but from an industry point of view, the teaching became much more relevant than research because I already knew how to do a lot of research. But the teaching gave me the opportunity to understand how humans learn and what it takes for someone to acquire new skills. And that ultimately I found a very rewarding thing and a very relevant thing to know when I then moved to industry. During this time, I got a fellowship from Max Planck as a faculty member who could spend a month every year at Max Planck. And this helped me build a lot of bridges. So I had this fellowship for 4 years while being a faculty member. So that helped a lot in networking. I also had the opportunity to become a Frontier Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences in the US. They have a Kavli Frontier Research Program. There I met a lot of people who were working in very diverse set of areas. And I again realized that, this is what I enjoy a lot. And then at this point, I started wondering, what would be the next step for me from ISER Pune? I was already an associate professor there, and I decided to just figure out what it would mean to work in industry. And I actually applied for not an MBA, but just a 3-month management program at the Scythe Business School in Oxford. So in fact, I got this fellowship while I was still a faculty member at ISER Pune. And then at the Scythe Business School, I got accepted. It was a competitive program where everybody applies and they have about 12 or 14 seats, but it's totally worth it because this program is focused on not a general MBA, but people who are science graduates and scientists who want to, who are interested in social entrepreneurship, so bringing change. And that gave me a lot of exposure to what is entrepreneurship, what are startups, how does a scientific idea go from technical discovery to actually become something that can be marketed. And it opened my eyes to a whole new world. Lots of management principles, learning about international relations, branding, history, culture. So it completely opened my world. And I would highly recommend that people try some way of spending time at a business school. And then I moved to Unilever. And actually, I already accepted the Unilever job before I went to Scythe. And when I asked Oxford if they would still let me have my fellowship, Oxford was wonderful about it. They said I could still come. Unilever was wonderful about it. They said you can join 3 months late. That worked out. And I shared this to, to also illustrate that industry is also very generous about letting its people grow and, encouraging their growth. And finally, after when I was at Unilever, I was in the strategic sciences group. And one of the questions I've been asked is, how different was the environment and the research projects that I did in academia versus what I did in Unilever. And I'm very happy to share that there was really no difference as far as the research was concerned. It's very rigorous. In fact, you meet really smart people, you meet people from various areas, and I can say that they're very open-minded. They want to know what are your skills, how can they leverage. So I found that in industry, people are far more interested in your skills, your research, your interests. and they are looking at how they can best collaborate with you. And this was refreshing. I loved it. And I was able to then go into different labs. It was, so the first 1 year, my brief was go into various labs, figure out what you feel like doing, where you feel you can bring value, and come back and make a proposal to us. So it was no different from academia. And I really enjoyed figuring out many different projects, and I seeded their modeling program. Somebody mentioned earlier that we should look at our skills and not the specific projects that we have worked on in academia. As an illustration, I can share that I had done a lot of spectroscopy, molecular modeling, and I had done a lot of protein structure work. But when I came to Unilever, they hired me to seed a modeling program. And the idea there was somebody who knows experiments and understands computation can seed a program where they can take everybody along on a journey of digital discovery. That's the kind of magic that can happen in industry. I had a very fruitful, wonderful time in Unilever. And then I got another opportunity at Shell, where they have a big analytical chemistry division. And Shell was looking at how they can seed, slightly transition their current analytical program into more of an R&D program within this particular division where I am. Shell has a very big, very rich R&D program, but for this particular division, they wanted me to come and bring more research flavor to it. And that seemed like a very interesting job to me, and I ended up at Shell. So that's been my journey, and at each point I've learned many things. And my next slide is just to, in one line, what did I learn at each of my jobs? I learned in ISC to keep a multidisciplinary approach, the value of staying connected with the future. The program I used here became a commercial program later. Learn about resource planning, grant writing, relationships with people, maintaining them, the value of collaboration, and all of that can be leveraged when you go to industry. And in industry, the key point is to be involved and interested in teamwork and leadership. Be fast about whatever you want to implement. It has to be quick. The key difference is that you're not looking at something which is important 10 years down the line, but something that's impactful today. You have to be connected to the big picture, know why we are doing something, where it is applicable, who might use it, who might care about the research that we do. And there's a lot of value in industry for deep technical expertise, because that's what allows you to come up with game changer ideas that industry can then leverage. One of the key things that I learned in the business school, which was reinforced when I went to Unilever, is that you can impact society through business. You can do business and do good, and that is something that somehow we don't get that message until we are actually in industry. So to summarize, I would say in academia, there is a lot of focus on the individual, my research, my program, my lab, what did I do? Whereas in industry, you are interested in what can I do with everybody else? How can I make an impact? How can we all make impact? How can everybody 1 + 1 become 11? There's in academia, you have a direct control of resources, your gel apparatus, your everything. Whereas in industry, it's much more about resources that you may not control. But if your idea is good, you can influence other people and then have access to those resources. And then the kind of resources you can get are far richer, much more impactful than the max resource one can get for an individual lab. Deep expertise is important in both places. Here, when I say in academia, deep expertise, it's in a particular problem in a particular area, maybe an organism, maybe a particular type of research. Whereas deep expertise in your skill set is very important when you go to industry. Academia, there is one challenge you can have, which is after you've spent 10 years in a particular research area, the grants you can get continue to be in the same area. So if I have been a biochemist all my life and now I'm interested in climate change, it's very hard to pivot, right? Because granting agencies want to know how they will get a return on their investment. In industry, you can make subtle changes because there are teams which would be involved in different aspects. So you can be a biologist in Shell and still contribute to sustainability by asking what are they doing in nature-based solutions. So I can be a spectroscopist and still be interested in a different area and still be valuable to them. So that's my summary. I feel that irrespective of whether you are in academia or industry, three things really matter. One is knowing your purpose, what matters to you, why are you doing what you are doing, how you can make a positive impact in the environment you are in. Networking, I think every speaker before me has mentioned it. Network, network, network. So important. This job I got, the first Unilever job I got was because of the small grant I wrote when I was a PhD student. Must mentor other people and be mentored. Always find a mentor for yourself. And I think the key is curiosity and commitment to lifelong learning. If you're curious, why, then people see a value and people see that you bring ideas and you will bring energy to a project, and then they are very keen to have you around. So that's my 2 pence, and I'm open to questions after the when the panelists open it.
Thank you, Dr. Puranik, for a wonderful talk and sharing your journey with us. We'll be moving to our next speaker, Dr. Atanu Sengupta, who is currently the head of advanced characterization technologies at Dr. Reddy's laboratory in Hyderabad. He obtained his PhD in chemistry with a focus in nanotechnology at the University of Washington. Afterwards, Dr. Sengupta transitioned to the real-time analyzer company as senior research assistant, where he contributed to several NSF and NIH-funded projects as principal investigator, and also collaborated with US Navy, DoD, EPA, and NASA to develop analytical tools for chemical and biological detection. In 2013, he moved back to India and joined Dr. Reddy's laboratory as a senior chemist, and later promoted to associate director position before he took up his current role. In this talk today, he will be focusing the major differences in R&D structure between Indian and US industries, and about his experience moving from a scientist to a leadership position. Please join me welcoming Dr. Sengupta. Dr. Sengupta, if you can share your slides, I will stop sharing.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. And I think most of the previous panelists have been extensive and thorough about their perspective. And that is the same kind of perspective I'm going to share in my talk. But I will first talk about a little bit of my experience. Just let me put my slide on. You can see that. Okay. So it's good to look back. It's good to look back the journey we covered. And for me, it's 20 years or 15 years of industry experience after I graduated, right? So, and it's very good to see where we started. I started in University of Washington. My core training was in physical chemistry. So I was a PhD in chemistry department. And interestingly, during that time, University of Washington, Seattle, the Seattle campus has one of the 9 institutes who are offering dual degree program. And in the dual degree, what we have to do is that we have to write a research proposal that encompasses mostly the broader aspect of 2 fundamental core disciplines. And I selected nanotechnology, and that was the start of my journey. So, and that was the start of a very exciting research phase and a very exciting place in Seattle. My focus was in the PhD was mostly in biosensors, optics, nanoplasmonics, and my research was directed towards devising a integrated detection platform for biological particles, and I was collaborating with not only the chemistry department, chemical engineering department, as well as the material science department. And during that time, my proposal got funded by NSF, and that was the start. I was an NSF fellow. What what was a unique experience from my PhD is that, as many of the previous panelists highlighted, the collective collaboration of science. So what I understood during that point, that how the science can be collaborative, how that the research can be so interdependent, how your knowledge and how your background is sharpened by different core domains, their ideas, their views, and how you sharpen your career destination from that. So when I graduated, after I graduated, I already built core uh, strength in several domains because my research was so outreaching. While I was exploring lot of semiconductor industry, for example, Intel, Applied Materials, where the focus is kind of fabrication and applying my knowledge in nano substrate, nanotechnology, and device making. Another domain was sensors and diagnostics. And so I was kind of in between, so I didn't know. And frankly, at that point of time, I was not that resourceful. And it was 15, 20 years back. There was not of lot of this kind of platforms available. There was not of lot of data available. The internet was not so much. So we had to decide, and I had to decide. So, and sometimes the decision is based on what you very informed decision, what you want to do. Something the decision is intuition, and something the decision is a matter of choice. So what happened that while I was interviewing two companies just after my PhD, one I was interviewing with Intel, and I was interviewing a company in East Coast and who was doing kind of research which is very much aligned to my PhD, pretty much the same thing, but they are very much dependent on me because that is the domain they are going to explore. They were working with several defense agencies in US, DRDO, DRDO, US Defense, DOD, yeah, then NASA, then NSF, NIH, as well as the few of the army research organization in US. So at that point of time, they were very dependent, and they were very reaching out to me, and they were coming out with a lot of good opportunities and offer. Another thing is that the domain I was willing to learn. I That was kind of a domain that I didn't venture thoroughly, but I had a kind of a background that I was excited to join. But for some reason, the destiny, the time, the Intel went into a hiring freeze, and I had to graduate. And so that I decided to move to the East Coast. So it is a long relocation. And you know the West Coast to East Coast, even while we are talking about US and India, and there is also a difference in culture in East Coast and West Coast. So it was a career transition that moment, and I moved to my next company, which is a very small company though. It's a startup. So while you are in startup environment, you know a lot of things. You learn a lot of entrepreneurship. You learn a lot of strategic thinking. You get a lot of business acumen. You know how to survive on your own. There is a lot of pressure. There is a lot of pressure of deliverables, timeline. There is a lot of trust on your ability, and the trust is very much because you are so dependent for their growth. So the very first 6 months I struggled. Literally, I struggled. So it was very difficult for me to commit to my deadline. It was very difficult for me to move the project. And here I was working with several interesting projects. One project is building a device for the military. And by training, I'm a spectroscopist like Mrinalini. So I was trying to build the handheld device and to analyze fuel. And you know that that at that point of time, the lot of focus was homeland security. US was on with war with Afghanistan. There was a lot of troops mobilized in Afghanistan. So, and you know that the way these troops mobility depends on fuel, and the fuels they also depend on the local fuels, and it is very difficult to depend on local fuel because of the quality. So what they used to do, they used to carry a mobile van, and they have to have all analytical tools in that mobile van to analyze those fuel and qualify those fuel based on their quality before they're using that. And they also used to drop their own fuel, airdrop them on the ground. So it was a huge expense for the military and a strategic mobility challenge. So they reached out to several companies who can provide a solution, and we are trying to provide a solution to handle. During the time, not only this kind of device which talks about analyzing a handheld device, a portable device, it's working with a lot of NSF funded program, DARPA funded program in making some diagnostic device for pathogens, for detections, not even in doctors' clinical settings as well as in the lab setting. We're trying to devise a lot of diagnostic assays and kits based on some nano optical sensors. And I stayed there for the company 6 years, and what I learned was immense. I learned how to come with my own business proposal. I learned how to put my thought process, carry the research from concept to commercialization. I learned how to network, how to collaborate with also the not only the community, the scientific community, nor also the business community, and come up with a product, the business angle. And that's the immense learning. And I think at any point of stage of life, we as a scientific community need to learn this. And as we grow into the leadership mood, and you need to learn all this, all the all the other things that connects the science, that helps in making a scientific strategy or a product strategy. So after that, in 2013, there was a big career decision for me. I was kind of I always wanted to come back to India. I always wanted to try to use my knowledge, whatever I back in my country, and I needed a trigger of purpose. So I was exploring. I didn't know where I would go. The primary intention was I have to join academia because I have to open my lab. I have to be an entrepreneur. And in India, it's very easy to be in your lab and then spin off your company because there are a lot of flexibility also in US. So that was my initial goal. And so I also got selected in Young Investigator Meet in Boston. I am also from 2012. Why I am returnee from US. So at that point of time, I interviewed with Reliance also. I interviewed with Dr. Reddy's. I interviewed with a few of the IITs, IIT Hyderabad and few of the IITs, Kanpur. So I interviewed with them, and and I think Dr. Reddy's gave me a very inspiring pitch that how the drug pharmaceutical healthcare industry is will be disrupted in terms of their growth in the next few decades. So they were absolutely right. And we are right now we know the scenario we are in, and we know very well the how much we are dependent on healthcare and pharma. So starting from vaccines, starting from drugs, starting from the diagnostics, life science and pharma, we know now how it will impact the next few decades. And this will I think the focus will be sustained going ahead. We don't want to go face another crisis of this. We need to be ready and prepared. So Dr. Reddy's is one of the big global generics company, and it's and we are in generic business. We are in biosimilar. We also have a lot of active pharmaceutical API business in ingredients. We supply API molecules. And in 2013, they were having a strategic change to more like to a complex drug delivery platform. So they were thinking of opening the complex generics to expand their portfolio. And when they started to open the complex generics, so they need to have a different mindset, a different kind of skills. And as I would again emphasize, like my former panelist, the industry is skill driven. Industry is how you apply the skill to make a real translatable product and research, right? So, the skills they are looking for is not was not in core in pharma. In India, we are very strong in biology, and we have a core, very in-depth biologist and a core biology community in India. But what Dr. Reddy was trying to develop is a core in material science, and they wanted some physicists, they wanted some engineers to join and open a material characterization cluster, so that the real goal was try to innovate new drug delivery platforms. And while they try to innovate different process and try to make equivalent product to an innovator brand being generics, they need to know the pharmaceutical. So that's where my last pit stop at this current moment. So it's my current pit stop. So this is so what I here I lead a material characterization team, and that material characterization team has evolved in several dimensions. We started with a lab, and this lab it's a state of the art characterization lab, and I am proud to say that yeah, I also didn't believe that lab can exist in India. So based on US I came. I didn't see any difference. I didn't see any difference in terms of pedigree, in terms of the core competence, in terms of infrastructure, based on my doctorate experience. So this lab has end-to-end characterization capability of analytical capability from an atomic level to a powder level. So we can characterize an atom, we can see their molecular structure, we can deduce their crystal structure, we can make that crystal forms to how they look like in a particle with a lot of intense modeling, computation, and how these particles will behave in a product, in a matrix, their flow property, their stability, all simulated modeling team. And also we develop a lot of tons of data so that we carry to the regulatory agency that how much we know about their product. So this is a very intense team. So this is of whole my journey. So I started with a background in chemistry and ended up as a pharmaceutical guy, and driving a pharmaceutical product development and leading a process analytical core functional in overall Dr. Reddy. So it's a huge leap. It's a huge leap and huge learning. So my few tips to anyone who is aspiring to come to industry, and first of all, first pillar is to first step is to getting into the industry. The next step is to sustain in the industry. The final step is excel in the industry. So if you look in the first step, and you so I divide into this three fundamental pillars. One is purpose. So what you should be having purpose. You should be knowing what you are passionate in. What are your dreams? What do you want to do? Unless you have a purpose, you are passionate, you cannot bring the same amount of energy, you cannot excite people, you cannot have exciting science and work. So you have to have a purpose. So you have to develop a core strength and core expertise. And core expertise means skill sets. And skill sets means you have to have a strong background. And you have to know the value fit. You need to know where you want to go, how you want to build your career. So it is not that I have a core strength, but my value is not there in that industry, in that business. So then that will never happen. That overlap will never happen. And definitely you have all this clarity once you have a good connect. Sometimes you need a mentor, sometimes you for your purpose, redefining your purpose. Sometimes you need a coach, what you want to do. Sometimes you need to know where you fit with a networking, like from industry people who can guide you. And sometimes you need to know what will be your next core strength, what you need to cultivate.
Dr. Dr. Sengupta, if you can summarize maybe in two minutes or so,
this
we'll
is
get
my
back
last,
to you. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
my last slide.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
So this is if you can identify those campus, this campus is Apple, so this is industry, and this campus is Harvard, right? So these are the kind of our dream come true, right? If you want to join an industry, you want to be in Apple, Google, right? And doesn't and if you want to go to academia, you're going to want to go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, right? So those are the so the few things that you need to know how your strengths fit today in business, in industry. What are your core skills? You need to know, you need to have art of good storytelling. You need to be short. You need to be very precise. You have a good communication. You have a good articulation skill. You have to develop your T. T means your depth should be there, but over a period of time, you should be developing your breadth. The breadth means understanding of the product, what you are working, understanding the problem you are working, understanding the business you are working. So you can connect multiple domains. And those domains are very important to prosper. Your non-scientific accomplishment, you don't, your leadership, your teamwork, communication, problem solving, leadership. And this is a little bit different in academia, if I understand. You emphasize your achievement, your publications, pair, your mode, your scientific credibility should be well demonstrated. You should be extensive and in detail. Your CV should be extensive and detailed. Talking about all you should be having a good depth in your domain. You should be known in your domain. Your scientific accomplishment with respect to publication, presentation, and conference. So these are the major points I want to share. I don't want to share further because these are all the points shared by my previous panelists. What I can tell you, good luck. And you can always connect with me. You can always connect with any one of us, I believe, if you have any further question. And this is a very forward-looking webinar in time of this crisis. So, and it's good to being distracted with this very engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sengupta, for your very insightful talk and different aspects which we are all learning today. So here we'll be moving to our next section, which is our panel discussion. So we have two additional panelists to join. So before I introduce our additional panelists, we'll be creating a short poll to know the main challenges the audience is facing right now while they might be applying to an industry position. So Manali, if you can pull up the poll. And while we'll have the poll, I would like to introduce our two additional panelists, Dr. Ramasamy Subramanian and Mr. Himangsu Singh. So Dr. Subramanian is a professor of biological sciences and biomedical engineering at Purdue University. Dr. Subramanian earned his PhD in molecular biophysics from IISc Bangalore. After graduation, he moved to Uppsala for a fellowship at Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. Dr. Subramanian then moved as a faculty at the University of Iowa while working as an assistant dean and director of core research facilities in Iowa. He helped to create the university's structural biology program, an accomplishment he later duplicated at INSTEM in India. He was the founding dean at INSTEM. He co-founded and served as first CEO of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms, a life sciences innovation hub for academia, industry, and startup companies. Welcome, Dr. Subramanian. I would also like to introduce our last panelist, but not the least, Mr. Himangsu Singh. He works as a senior talent acquisition manager at Forrester Research, Delhi, and manages international recruitments for his company, focusing on countries Australia, China, India, Singapore, UK, France, Germany, and Netherlands. He works in close collaboration with different teams from research, counseling, and sales. He obtained a master's in business administration, human resources from Pondicherry University, and undertook an executive development program in talent management from XLRI Jamshedpur. Prior to joining Forrester, Mr. Singh managed international search at Quadrangle Delhi and worked as a team leader for recruitments at FlexiWorks India Private Limited. So welcome, Mr. Singh and Dr. Subramaniam. I would like to now stop sharing, and now we'll be showing our poll results as well. And then all of the panelists, if you can share your screen, or sorry, if you can start your video, in that way we will have the discussion going. So Manali, can you share the poll result, please?
Yeah, it's being shared.
Okay. For some reason, I do not see it.
I can.
Okay.
So, Shubhadi, for your information, the finding appropriate industrial R&D position is the biggest challenge people are facing right now.
Okay, so like I said, the poll was to find out what are the main challenges while applying to positions in industry. And we divided a few questions like how to apply, how to prepare, finding appropriate positions, lack of networking, and not a proper fit. So we have actually divided our panel discussion into three subtopics, which is hiring process, broader overview of Indian industry, and academia industry partnership. So these are the main areas. So since we got a response from the audience that the finding appropriate R&D is the main challenge, so I would like to start with the first process, which is the hiring process. And here, my first question to all the panelists, and maybe we can start this with Mr. Himanshu Singh. So as you already know that majority of the participants in the webinar are from academia and as well as versed with different steps involved in the academic recruitment process. Could you please elaborate the recruitment process for an industrial R&D position? How different and the steps are involved compared to an academic hiring? And of course, I would like to hear from all of you as well, your insights on this.
Sure. So Subhadi, first of all, thank you for having me today. It's an honor, it's a privilege. So I won't be answering the question specifically, keeping in mind, the most of the attendees which are there amongst us today. I'll keep it at a high level, at a broader level, because no matter whichever industry you are aspiring to get into, the processes, the fundamentals, the protocols pretty much remain the same when one is looking to find a job. Now, talking about, I'll start with the interview do's and don'ts, and sorry for me being so naive, but going to the basics, because I think like most of the times we tend to ignore those basics and look for the bigger picture, which is like, why am I not getting an interview call? Why am I not talking to the recruiters, or people are not looking at my profiles or my applications? I'm just not getting any calls back. That's the major question that I hear from a lot of people who are looking for jobs. So I think like, in terms of the interviews, do's and don'ts, I have my own interviews, do's and don'ts. So I'll start with the do's first, right? Because let's start on a positive note. So do your homework. I did hear this from some of the my esteemed panelists as well, wherein they did touch base upon this aspect, that it's really important to prepare well for your for the company that you are trying to get into. So I think do your homework. That's a very essential first step. Make a first good impression. Due to the pandemic, all that we are finding is that the interviews are happening virtually, and we tend to think that, okay, it's just a video interview, let me dress up in a casual manner. No, I think it's very important that when you are presenting yourself in on a video, the bare minimum that you can do is wear a collared shirt, because you're trying to create an impression on the interviewer. So treat every interaction with the corporate world as if it's your last interaction, so you have to give your best shot. I think that's very important. So keep that in mind. Make a good first impression. Listen and respond accordingly. I think at times we get over enthusiastic when we want to talk, we want to present ourselves in totality. You have 30 minutes of interview slot, but you want to say everything that you know because you're excited. You want to impress the interviewer. I think let's take a step back, take a deep breath. The interviewer is smart enough. They'll ask you questions, what they want to ask you, and keep your answers short and precise and crisp. That's the biggest mantra, when you just keep on going, talking about something in length, I think it just loses the interest of the other person. Prepare smart, have open-ended questions to ask the interviewer. Another thing where a lot of people think that if I'm interviewing for a position, then I'm just required to answer the questions that the interviewer is asking me. Yes, that's partly right for the first 20-25 minutes. But when you get that opportunity where the interviewer says like, do you have any questions for me? You should not be saying like, I'm good. That's fine. I think you covered everything. I think the least that you can do to showcase your interest is like, yeah, I am really interested, and be prepared to ask a few questions. And don't shy away from selling your strengths and expertise. That is what you are there for, right? You're trying to impress the interviewer to get that job. So don't shy away from selling your strengths and expertise. So those are the do's basically. And before I go on the don'ts, I just wanted to see if this is resonating, with what you were looking for. If this is helpful.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just take another 30 seconds. So talking about the don'ts, don't speak poorly about your current company or your former employees. I think it's absolutely imperative to keep that in mind. Please remember, when we change jobs or when we are looking for a job, there's a reason why we're doing it, right? But there's no reason for you to blurt out everything on that call to your future employer that this is the reason why you are trying to, leave that organization. That just gives a little bit of a negative impression about one's personality. So avoid doing that. Don't oversell yourself in terms of the information on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile. Whatever you are trying to sell, you should be able to back it up with data and facts. I think that's very important. Don't speak over the interviewer. I think it's very important. It's a basic hygiene that we're talking about. If I'm talking, allow me space to talk. And while you're talking, I'll try to keep myself on mute so that I can listen to you clearly as well. So I think that's the basic hygiene that we can maintain. And don't let any past rejections, basically have any impact on your mind. Treat every interview opportunity as something which is starting from fresh. No matter how many rejections you had to face in the past, or how many recruiters did not show up again giving you the feedback, or just like going away from the world, don't have that for the next conversation that you get into. Always go into the conversation with a smile on your face, because if you have smile, your body language actually reflects on your voice tone as well. So those are going to be my top don'ts for preparing for an interview. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. If any one of you want to join, please go ahead.
So this I have few points to add. So when you are looking for some position in industry, right? You need to network extensively. And for example, if you are looking some position in Dr. Reddy's, you need to know what Dr. Reddy's, how the Dr. Reddy's recruitment process, hiring process are. So, and it is easy to find those information, right? For example, if all of these companies, they have their different strategies of reaching out to aspiring candidates. For example, Dr. Reddy's goes to some of the conferences, there are career fairs, and some of the channels in LinkedIn, and you can always connect to few of the hiring managers and recruiters and build a kind of connection with them, and that will be helpful. Because what if needed is that a little bit of, in this period, right, we need a little bit of confidence in the candidate and their skill set, and prior knowledge and prior connection, and that is always helpful, because that there is we can start with that, right? So that is another thing. So
Dr. Subramanian, if you want to add a few points, that will be really great.
I've now hired people for large industries, but I have only one point to make. One tendency that many people have which is completely wrong, is that they somehow feel that I did not get any academic job, therefore I'm going to industry. That's completely not true. And some people have mentioned that already. The level of science that happens in industry is very, very high. And just remember that it's not a second class job. In fact, in terms of impact to society, working in industry, you create a larger impact than working in academia. Just remember that, and don't feel like, oh, I'm going to industry because I'm getting not getting an academic job. Remember, only 8% of people are in academics, and academics is a club. And I'm part of the club. I've been very successful, so I'm not going to say anything bad about it. But the point is, it's not that one is better than the other. You have to listen to what is in your heart. And industry recruiters very quickly pick it up that if you feel, oh, I'm coming because I didn't get an academic job. Just be very clear about this.
Okay, thank you. So we can move to the next question. So an academic trying to move into industry may lack of a professional network of peers. How important are these professional network and personal connections in landing into a job in industrial R&D? Do you have any suggestions for our participants to improve their professional network? So this point came up even in our polling results as well. And all of you have already told us how important the network is or networking is. So if you can cast light a little bit on, how to be efficient about networking. So
I'm going to go first because I'll tell you the reason why I'm going to go first. I have graduated very few PhD students, about 14 of them, except one, except two, everybody else is in industry. Okay. So one of the advice I give people, when people come to say, I want to apply for a postdoc in my lab, and I have several postdocs, most of them are in industry, again, except one, over 20, 30 postdocs, everybody has gone industry. I ask the simple question to yourself that if you want to come and postdoc with me, look at what my former students and postdocs have done. If you really want to get into Harvard or Stanford and be a faculty, you're coming to my lab is the wrong lab. Your network already begins because my former students, my former postdocs were industry, you automatically are your network now if you come to my lab. So think about this. Okay, what are the former students and postdocs of this person doing? And they begin to be your first level of networking. And so it's a very important little tiny message, but think about this.
Thank you, Dr. Subramanian. If anyone else want to add a few points.
Sure, I can.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is somebody speaking?
No, please go ahead.
Or do you want me to go? Yeah. So, it is not possible that you don't have the network because if you did your bachelor's and you did your master's, then you know 60 people from your bachelor's, 60 people from your master's, and the entire graduate student population that you went to dinner with at the dorm. So it's not that we don't have a network. We have huge networks. See, completely randomly, I think panelists were chosen, and it turns out that Rams and I know each other from way back at NCBS. And two of the panelists are alumni from my institute. Yeah, so it just does not happen that way. And when I was invited and I got this invite. It turned out that when we connected on LinkedIn, then we had already had 9 people in common network in LinkedIn. So it's that we haven't looked at our network with that vision. Who do I know? How do I know them? And LinkedIn is an amazing tool for this. As soon as you start looking at your environment with the eyes of building my network, it will show up. It's not possible to get a PhD and not have a network. So that's my input.
Can I turn on his video, please? It'll be nice to see the big man.
Nice to see you guys. This is wonderful.
Yeah, if anyone else want to add anything, or I'll.
Another thing is,
yeah, go ahead, please.
yeah, another thing additional, in addition to your network, you should be proactively looking to network, right? So, for example, if you are working in a certain domain, right, you have an expertise, you are have a knowledge base, you post interesting stuff, you do show your presence on LinkedIn, you grab the attention of the community that you have a voice, you have a identity, you have an expertise in this domain, and automatically you will create conversation, you will create interest, you will create collaboration with all those. So there are primary networks, our school networks, our college network, our job network, and then you proactively looking for network. So, and again, LinkedIn is a very good tool and a platform where you can do that. So that is one thing you can also do.
Yeah, so since Dr. Ansari has joined, I'll just introduce Dr. Ansari in short. For whom who don't know yet, Professor Ansari is actually founding director of Corona and SN Bose programs and Win Step Forward, and he's the Sci-ROI main leader. And he is right now faculty chair of chemical biology and therapeutics at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So welcome, Dr. Ansari, as well. So I would like to move to the next question for our panelists.
Subhadeep, this is Himanshu. Am I allowed to add one more point on networking,
sure,
if I may?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so I wanted to say this aloud, that why do we need to do networking? Why is it important? You know, we're talking about networking. It's a way to get your next dream job, but I think it's important to understand that why networking is very important. You know, if you just visualize an iceberg, what you see at the surface is the kind of jobs which are posted on the social media, on the job portals, or basically, you know, in the different career web pages of the organization. So that's like 10% of you know, what you're seeing as the open jobs in the market. 80% to 90% of the jobs get filled up due to internal reference or employee referrals. So I think that's where the need for networking becomes more important. So if you're thinking that you land up your next job just purely because of LinkedIn job postings, or Naukri.com or Times Jobs or other fancy looking job portals, I don't think so. You'll get that. So networking becomes important because of that. And I think it's equally important to understand that networking does not mean that you know, I send you, Subhadeep, so I see you the biggest on my screen right now. I don't know you, but I send you a note on LinkedIn that, hi Subhadeep, this is Himanshu, I'm manager TA, I'm looking for my next job. I don't think so you'll really care about it, right? Because you get that kind of inquiries, like hundreds of emails like that asking for job. I think it's important, like Mr. Atanu just spoke about, that it's important to grab attention. So if I have something, you know, first I need to choose my network right, in a right way, that how Subhadeep can help me to get my next job. And then rather than asking the direct question, which is, can you get me a job? I need to grab your attention with the work that I have done in my field, either in my academia days or either in my corporate life. So just wanted to add that as well. So networking is really important.
Great point. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for your input.
Sorry, Subhadeep, even I'd like to add something here, since
sure, of course. Yes.
Is so very important. So I'd just like to extend what Dr. Subramanian said, that you have to choose your lab, right? Your PI, right? But often it happens that we just don't know. It happened in my case. I didn't know. My lab, all of them are in academia, and I wanted to go into the industry. So it's still not too late. Even when you get there could be a lab next door who all are in the industry. Just go talk to them, share your skill set with them. They might be able to help you out, right? And I attended conferences like basically every 6 months I was at a conference. I pushed my PI to send me to.
I think we have
so you have to figure out ways, but your network is absolutely of utmost importance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't
want
to have the last word, but this is the most important thing, that networking people forget.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in most of the SCROI Chicago meetings when it was there, and many of the people I still keep in touch with, and they email me and they connect with me. And I remember Gautam Das from the YIM in Boston, because I was there in YIM in Boston, and it is just not important for your first job. It's also important for you to know. I mean, now I'm on the other side, I'm employing people. And it is this network that I use to employ people. I actually have not employed anybody in any of my 4 startups by advertising. I always said, I need this person who in my network I already know can be the right fit, or who can tell me the right fit person, because I'm a startup. I don't have money to advertise. I don't have money to wait. I don't have money to hire Himanshu to hire somebody for me, because it's very expensive. So I'm just saying my network. So I'm not at my level. I'm networking with young people, not because I want a job, because this is the network from whom I'm going to hire. So think about that. The people who you're approaching might be senior, but they're not doing anything selfless. I'm doing this because of my own selfish interest.
Yeah, thank you all again for wonderful insights on networking. I think it will be really helpful for our audience. We can move to the.
Can I add? And networking is one of the favorite subjects, right? So I was in corporate Reliance, and we used to hire a lot of people in different areas. And one common thing out of experience I saw is people say, I don't have a network, but did you work to achieve that network is one question that I would like to advise the youngsters. I mean, this is hard work. You have to constantly go to LinkedIn and other platforms and work towards it. It is one work that you do for everything, as Rams pointed out. I mean, it is work for everyone. And the other side also, now I have a startup. So we are always looking for talented people. And for us also, it's equally important to network, not just to get the job, but to get the right people. So,
of course. Thank you again. So our next question would be, Dr. Puranik, if you want to add something.
No, if time is up, I'll stop.
Course.
Otherwise, I'll add.
Of course, go ahead. Please.
So I just want to say that when I moved from NCBS to IISER Pune, I didn't know that I wanted to move to IISER Pune. I just knew I wanted to move. So a couple of years before I had decided that I will move, I organized the Young Investigator meeting at Bhubaneswar and invited 200 postdocs to this meeting. And to get jobs for these postdocs, I invited 13 or 15 heads of institutes all over India. And of course, they met each other. And because I was arranging for them to meet each other, I got to meet every director of every institute in India. That's how I found my IISER job. I hosted the director of IISER at my YIM. Similarly, my job at Unilever, I got not through an advertisement. They didn't even have a position. They had to create it when I went there. I only got it because I went there as a consultant for free, just to have a chat every now and then whenever I was visiting Bangalore. So jobs just show up. And even my current job at Shell just came out of a social interaction. So really no job ever have I got because I responded to an advertisement.
Okay. So I think these are all good points we should remember while we are doing the job search in industry. So we can move to now the next question is one of the pressing concerns for the academic researchers while moving is to judge their fit with the work culture in an industry. Apart from their scientific acumen, how can someone judge themselves if they are suitable for career in industry or not? Anyone want to start, and then we can go for a few minutes?
Well, I can maybe start. I asked this question to myself for a year before I actually took the plunge. And I had already been, I had a lot to lose giving up my IISER job. There are a few things that you can see already in your, when you're in academia. When you're working away in the lab, do you get excited by problems that other teams are facing? Do you like to join in the troubleshooting? Are you curious about, oh, they have a weird result. Why do they have a weird result? And then get involved. And or do you feel that, no, well, I'm interested in NF kappa B and that's what I'm going to look at. Then it doesn't work. Then it's not for you. But of course, we won't know this until we decide to check that out. So sometimes it just happens that you're not disinterested in other people's work, but much more focused in yours. And so you may not have given yourself the opportunity. And now when you go back and go to the lab, just see how interesting it is. Similarly, when you are reading papers and you're going through the journal weekly, I read journals every week. And then do you find yourself interested only in very core subject area, or are you interested in PNAS in things outside of your area? These are some indicators of what your basic nature is. And of course, there are many other points, but I think that's a seed to how you are interested and where your interest lies. The other thing I found for myself, one of the questions was addressed to me, why did I decide to move to industry? It's because of what's your driver. And for me, the driver was impact. Where can I make the most impact? What are the kinds of areas where I can make the most impact? And then you can ask yourself, am I really on a path to absolute path-breaking academic discovery? Am I really burning away at a problem like structure of DNA? Then I should stick to my academic core. But am I more interested in an impact which is, let's say, on the environment? Then maybe industry is the right place. For me, it was, because I saw that my best paper is read maybe by 1,000 people. But if I discover a more sustainable source for one of the ingredients in one of the detergents at Unilever, it's tons and tons of material that's going to change how it lands in the environment. For me, it was a super exciting opportunity. Just the idea of my impact in A versus B was a decision maker for me. So I think what helps is to imagine what success looks like. And that tells you what your definition of success is, and what's better suited for you. The other thing I did when I was faced with this decision is look at role models. Who do I admire? What do they do? Yeah. I really admired Rams because, he came from Iowa, he came to NCBS, he talked to all of us, he was really curious. Then he started off in STEM. So if you find people like Rams interesting, then you might be interested in industry. So those are the kinds of indicators I found relevant.
Thank you, Mrinalini. I'm flattered.
Thank you, Dr. Puranik.
I do this all the time, and I ask people, as humans, we are taught something, right? And it's much more in the Indian culture. We always try to make decisions based on logic. Decisions based on logic are bound to fail because we are making decisions with limited amount of information. So here is a simple suggestion, and this is my end spiel, and every time I talk to young people. Make decision with your heart, and then let your brain take you to successfully executing it. Your heart makes decisions correctly. That's the best for you. Your brain will tell you all kinds, it's making information. So decide with your heart, and then use your brain to execute. That's the fundamental advice that I give people in anything that you do. Whether you're selecting your partner or whether you want to eat food, anything, this is the primary thing you do, and apply that for your job as well.
Thank you.
I can't help but comment on that. Is that how you selected your partner, Dr. Rams?
Yes, I did. Sorry. Unfortunately, yes, or fortunately, yes. I think fortunately today, 27 years later, I can say fortunately.
I think his mother had something to do with it.
Thank you, panelists, for your inputs on the first topic. So we'll move on to the second topic of discussion, which is about broader overview of Indian industry. So we had created a poll earlier in our social media platforms that indicated that our members are more interested in the biotech and pharma industry. So my question is if you can comment on the current scenario of the R&D job market in this sector in India, and then what other managerial service positions such as consultancy are available for a researcher in Indian industry other than R&D. So if any one of you would like to start on it.
Yes, I can start. So in the pharma sector, pharmaceutical sector, pharmaceutical R&D are basically on three types, three categories. One is the discovery-driven R&D. One is the small molecule and biosimilar R&D, what we are doing in a few of the companies. Another one is the service-driven R&D. So the service-driven R&Ds, for example, there are companies like Syngene's and there are other companies who are service provider. Discovery research is happening in pockets. And again, I think Vidhi has rightly pointed out there are scopes in discovery, but this has not prospered to that extent in India. Hopefully, discovery research will be more flourishing in Indian R&D. But there is a lot of small molecule and biosimilar based R&D in pharma. So for example, if you look at the pharma sector in generics, and there are a lot of players, and I think and if you see at the top 10 R&D in the companies that are investing in R&D, there will be 4 or 5 pharma companies coming. Sun Pharma will be coming, Dr. Reddy's will be coming, and the category of this job is kind of different skill set. So we need biologists, we need chemists, chemical engineers. Also, we need a lot of modeling and simulation. That is and also we need a different in the scope of regulatory clinical. So this is the whole landscape of R&D in pharma that what I know and I have experienced.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. If anyone else would like to talk about R&D and other jobs available, any other panelists would like to chip in?
Okay, Mrinali, go for it. Mrinali, go ahead.
Okay, so I think although the question is about pharma R&D, I would like to point out that the same skill set also works in FMCG companies like Unilever, where of course they make a lot of hygiene products. They have a very strong microbiome program. Well before you fall sick, you need to address bacteria and viruses in your daily hygiene. So these companies and their products, the shampoos, deodorants, cleaning agents are all addressing biological questions. How do you get rid of bugs? How long will you be able to keep a place clean and so on? Especially in the Corona time, cleaning products have become very important. One of my patents from Unilever is about a small molecule that can block bacteria which cause odor in underarm environment, right? So your skills, which are biotechnology related skills, are relevant in other places. Another area which a biologist will not quickly think of but is relevant is also CO2 abatement. There are industries now trying to understand, and Shell is one of them, how does soil retain carbon, what are the kinds of carbon cycles, what different kinds of biological systems, how do they, what role do they play in the recycling of CO2. It requires thinking a little bit out of the box to find opportunities which are pharma-like but may not be in pharma. A third example I would give is of Novozymes, which produces all sorts of enzymes, and there a structural biologist is core to their requirement. And finally, last but not the least, companies which are now looking at making medical devices are also places where some sort of biological, biomedical application will be there. And all these companies do exist in Bangalore in India.
Thank you so much, Dr. Puranik.
I don't want to put Gautam Das in a spot, but I'm going to ask this question because one of the things that's very an interesting career is providing technology support And this is critical for doing good science, both for Unilever as well as for academics, as well as for Ready Labs. So there is a great opportunity, and this is kind of the things that Gautam Startup is doing. So maybe you want to tell them the scope of high tech and the role it plays and the opportunities there, Gautam.
Sure. Thanks, Rams. So this question relates to both my experience being in Reliance and the startup. So Reliance experience is similar to what other people have already pointed out. Shell and Reliance invest a lot in R&D, so money was not an issue there. So we were able to do many kinds of programs. And from that experience, one point I would like to add from what others have already pointed out is that there's a feeling among young postdoctoral associates that this company doesn't do this, so this is the R&D of this company, which is not true. If you ask all the panelists, I mean, large companies, large corporates are open, so new R&D programs get established over time. So you have to be confident on convincing the management that new R&D programs can be done. For example, in Reliance, we started genomics, which was not existing. So these kind of things happen, and this I mean, we took it to a very good level, and that is where the next question is of services that Rams pointed out, and that was one of the reasons that I started this startup. And through Reliance, what I learned was many of the things need this high-tech infrastructure, and in that regard, the companies that exist today, especially let's say in genomics, are very, very few. There are some large companies, but not many startups, etc. There are government incubators, etc. But these service companies can contribute a lot to large companies' R&D. And for example, we do microbiome research for some of the global corporates. So that is one example. Before we started our lab, they would send those samples abroad or wherever possible. But when we started doing microbiome genomics, those samples are now coming to us from this global corporate. So that improves the whole ecosystem, the whole scientific environment in India. We are in Mumbai, and it was tough. I mean, Bangalore, Hyderabad are very good biotech hubs. So Mumbai, developing that ecosystem, and I traveled to, at least before the pandemic, I traveled to colleges, I traveled to medical schools to convince the power of genomics, and that communication to doctors, etc., is so important. I mean, they would not have known that such things exist. For example, an infectious disease specialist doesn't know that through genomics you can detect pathogens early on. So the communication, etc. So building the ecosystem is very, very important, and we are right now doing just that. Thanks.
I'm not going to talk about research at all. I think I want to again clear a fundamental misconception about what the purpose of a PhD is. You don't have to do research. You're trained to think and solve problems. It doesn't need to be problems in a laboratory. Okay, so a lot of the work I do today is actually not working in the lab, and I'm sure Asim doesn't work in the lab as well and do experiments. We are solving problems based on what we have learned. So if you look around you, there are social problems that you can solve as a PhD. There are problems in business that you can solve as a PhD. There are problems in the government sector that you can solve as a PhD. There are problems in NGOs that you can solve as a PhD. So I don't think the idea that I have to do research in a laboratory is the only thing that you can do. Sure, you can do academic research lab, go to a research lab, you can go to an industry research lab, or you can go to CROs or technology companies like what Gautam is running. These are all possibilities, but remember, these are all under the same thing. They are all bench research. In fact, there is a tremendous opportunity to step out of bench research and contribute to society. And I think, don't forget that. And I can give you examples, illustrations. For example, I spend 50% of my time running NGOs. Okay, this is an NGO that we have called, which is because there is not enough science funding in India. So I have an NGO that we are raising public money to create large philanthropic organizations to fund science in India, right? So there is a huge opportunity that is beyond bench research. You have to think about the skill set slightly differently. Don't think whether I can run an SDS gel or whether I can do a Raman spectroscopy. Think about I know how to solve a problem. If you're present, you're getting a doctorate in philosophy, and you're not getting actually a doctorate in microbiology, right? A philosopher is somebody who can observe, find problems, understand what are the things available to solve the problem, and then figure out how to solve the problem. So if you think about that as the skills that you have learned, your jobs are unlimited. And I think this is a mindset change that academia does not teach you, and you have to think about it. Because
I can just
academic
build on
job,
that.
yeah.
I'll just build on it. It's basically, the buzzwords that people use, right? A good PhD, it's not always true that PhD will teach you this, but if you have the desire to do this, what a PhD should teach you is how to formulate a problem, right? Like Ram said, you observe what the situation is, what the ground truths are, or what the existing questions are, questions that you might have. Those questions you formulate, right? This is what remains. And the next thing that the PhD, if I'm correct, people have different experiences, but the next thing the PhD should teach you is how can I use the resources available to me to solve the problem, right? So critical thinking, right? Formulation of problems, and then formulation of solutions, and then how to implement it. How would you lay down the path to this? These are transferable skills. You can apply to anything, right? If you had a good PhD, this type of mindset, this type of thinking will enable you to do anything you take on. I have a lot of friends who have left academia. Some of the smartest people I know went off and doing other things, setting policy for how you use Colgate in Africa. Seriously, right? So you can do all sorts. You have Mrinalini here talking about detergents at Unilever. Right? I don't know how much she learned about lipids and detergents and surfactants, but the mindset of like, here's the problem. What tools do I bring? What skills can I borrow from other people, right? I have a lab. I have hardcore chemists, computational biologists, cell biologists, engineers. I don't know how to do any of that, right? But I know where I want to go, right? And I know these are the people who have those skills, and they, along with me, working in a team, might be able to get us somewhere where none of us individually could have gone, right? So critical thinking, right? Formulating a problem, imagining a solution, formulating a solution, laying down the path, collecting the team, right? These are the sorts of skills. If you can, leverage them, and not everyone is good at all of them, but then don't be afraid to bring people who might be better than you, right? Look at this panel out here, right? Who might bring different life experiences and other training to bear on the problem, right? And then learn to work with that team. And there's nothing you can't do with that sort of mindset, right? So, and yeah, I do find that exactly as Ram said, as Mrinalini said, as Gautam has said, the one last piece, and I'll mention this because this has come up over the 15 years we've built the Khurana, BOS, Sci-ROI, WinStep, everything, is that I've had leaders in the world where we've placed Khurana BOS scholars or we've brought Sci-ROI kids back to India, say to me, and I'll quote one who was a good friend of Khurana's, Phil Sharp. He won the Nobel Prize for splicing. He said to me, he's at MIT, said to me, when I get students from India, Khurana or BOS scholars from India, and I tell them what needs to be done, they are the best at doing it, getting there the fastest. But if I don't tell them what to do and how I want it done, zero chance is going to work. Our educational system and our culture suppresses initiative, suppresses questioning the status quo and proposing things that might challenge the status quo. If this can be brought to bear in the skill sets that you get as a PhD student, especially in a good PhD, I think you can change anything, right? And I have found that if these things can be added by looking at the people around you, look at the choices they've made. And I'm supposed to thank people for doing this panel, but I just want to start the thanking right now. The sorts of answers that I'm hearing and sorts of discussion that is ongoing really do extract that aspect from it, right? How do you, trigger that initiative in you? I find Indians are among the most entrepreneurial people I've encountered, Indians and Chinese, partly because of limited resources, partly because of the jugaad nature that how do you fix the problem with what resources you have? If you can just tap into that, there's a lot that can be accomplished. And that is one thing we are not taught.
So here I'd like to for best interest of time, I'd like to take our the final section, which is our academia and industry collaboration or partnership, which might be happening back in India. So on that aspect, if you can shortly tell us about what are the new development happening in terms of academia and industry partnership back in India, or what are the main disadvantages or advantages in industrial research versus an academic research? Try to be in brief as much as possible, just for best interest of time. Thank you.
Who goes first?
So during my stay in US, I was in industry, so I was writing grants, and most of the grants we collaborated with academia. So all the small business innovative research, STTRs, the academia was a major partner. So the ecosystem, frankly, the ecosystems are well structured there, and it is very easy to get the academia and industry to be aligned with the mission of a project or a problem. And right now, while we have in Dr. Reddy's a lot of collaboration with academia, is that sometimes it's difficult to have the alignment in the jargon, definition of the problem, and sometimes we are in the different page at all, totally. So that is the thing I think India has to evolve. And this is more initiative not from industry as well as for academia to come together to get aligned with the problem statements and do respect the problems from their sector also, so that there is a kind of a focused effort, and I really hope to see that it's flourishing in India. So it is on the right path, but it has a long way to go.
I spent 10 years in academics in India, so I'm going to say this. You might not like what you want to hear. The Indian academic science is very shallow. So if I'm in industry in India, it's going to be very, very hard for me to pick academic scientists in India to collaborate with. The reason being that the problem I want to solve as an industry in India is problems that are related to the Indian population. Now, if I'm an academic, if I solve a problem related to the Indian population, my paper won't get accepted in Science Society, and I won't become a member of the academy. So my focus has changed. So most Indian good academics in India are working on problems of the West, not on problems in India. So it's a thing that needs to be broken, and it's a very cultural thing. It'll only change when the size of the Indian academic program increases to a level where that variety is available. Okay. The total budget of the Department of Biotechnology in India is about $300 million US. So this is for the whole country. Okay. Purdue is not in the top 50 life science schools in the world or in the US. And the budget of Purdue for life sciences is larger than 300 million. The number of people publishing for 5 years consistently papers in peer-reviewed journals in India is lower than any of the top 50, one top 50 school in the US. So the size is very small. So Indian academic size is a big limitation for Indian industry to find good collaborations, right? So if you look at many industries, they collaborate with outside. I mean, including my own startups. We want to do things, but we begin to work with people outside of India. So we have to understand the limitation as well. And I'm not blaming the individual academic. I'm just blaming the overall size of the Indian academic population is very small. So there is a problem. But Indian industry is growing faster than Indian academia. The government's investment in Indian academics has been very poor and very small. So beware of that when you talk about industry academia interactions. And industry doesn't have the patience, right? They want to solve a problem and they have to deliver. They can't say, I only will solve the problem with an Indian academic.
So I would like to, refute Ram here. So yeah, Rams, I see where you're coming from. And yes, there are challenges with respect to certain areas. But in certain other areas, there is a lot of industry academia partnership possible in India. And if you look, I have been doing that. Obviously, one of the key reasons why Unilever hired me is to leverage on those partnerships. Like in my previous role, we have published 2 papers together with ISC for Unilever. So those are the kinds of direct academic collaborative partnerships that you can have. And industry does have funding. So typically this would work where you have consultancy and you have students that you sponsor, and then you go and do collaborative work. Something that has changed in the last 10 years in academia industry collaborations is that places like ISC in STEM, which Ram's built actually, have now departments or have centers where sophisticated equipment has been made available for industry to come and use. And this has really opened up the opportunity for industry academia collaborations. There is a SENSE Institute in IISc. And if you are really on the fence about whether I want to be in industry or academia, target one of these departments, which are doing catering to academic researchers and industry, and sitting in the academic environment, so sitting in IISc. There is a new CPET which has come up in Bangalore, which is also looking to collaborate with industry. So there are these positions or these institutes which sit and on the boundary between an academic job and an industry job. Funding is small, like Ram said, but typically you can get funding from the Indian government whenever there is a spin-off, or you can get funding of the Atal program kind for companies which are Indian companies. So you can't get this funding if you're a multinational. It has to be a company registered in India. So that also occurs. But bigger companies like Unilever and Shell, they have their own corpus and they are interested in investing. And one of the roles that exists in both my previous and current companies is the person who looks after industry academia partnerships. That is a defined role, and there is such a position and somebody is in charge of doing that.
No, I remember you didn't refute me. The point is that you could count with your fingers, right? That's my point. The point is the size is very small. I'm not saying that doesn't exist or there is no scope. I'm just saying for a country of 1.6 billion people, if you can count this with your fingers, we have a problem. That's where I was coming from a 60,000 foot picture. Because, CCAM, this is what CCAM does, and that's what it was set for. But it is important.
Yeah,
but the
that
size
cannot be debated.
small.
Yes.
The size is very small.
Thank you all. Thank you all again for nice input on all of these. I would like to wrap up with our final questions. And I have been seeing that all of you are answering a lot of questions in chat. So thank you a lot for that. This one question came up from the audience, and I want to specifically ask this to Dr. Gautam Das and Dr. Khanna. On 2 different aspects. Like Dr. Khanna has mentioned, she has moved directly after her PhD to industry, and Dr. Das has done a postdoc. So is postdoc a necessity, or if someone wants to decide directly without a postdoc, what are the advantages and disadvantages? So anyone can start, but specifically we would like to know more about from 2 of you.
I can go first. So it heavily depends on the position that has been advertised or being put out there. Sometimes they have a genuine requirement for a fresh PhD because they want to train them into a certain role, right? And other times there are projects already in place running and they need someone to come and take over / build something from scratch. And right? So in that case, they'll hire an experienced postdoc. So both ways are fine. When you take the decision is important. So after PhD, after postdoc, I don't really think it matters to the industry. But of course, others can chime in here.
Thank you. Dr. Das, if you want to add.
Yeah, thanks, Subhadeep. That's a very important question, and we get this question every time. whether I should join an industry right after PhD or right after postdoc or even longer. Having worked in industries in the US, those people also come. So, I mean, my short answer would be it's about the numbers. At least where I worked, I saw that the number of PhD level scientist positions were higher than postdoc level scientist positions, than industry having worked 10-year positions. So it's a matter of choice. If you have made up your mind right after PhD that you would like to join an industry, then why not? There are more positions definitely there.
Thank you again. So just to wrap up, if any of you would like to add anything else, what we already talked about, please go ahead. After that, I would like to transfer it to Manali. So if anyone want to add a few things, if you please go ahead.
So the PhD and postdoc, I just like to add one point. So
sure.
If you know what you want to do, and you can, the number of positions which will be available will be more after your PhD, and more you spend time in your postdoc, then the fit will be becoming more and more challenging, because that's what, and this because of you are developing deep skill set and expertise. So it will not a matter that whether you want to join, it's a matter of fit. Then they don't want to hire an expertise level higher than what the position needs, right? So that is the reason. So I would recommend, if you want to do a postdoc, if you are doing a postdoc, so don't stretch the postdoc for a longer period of time, because your options will become more specific.
Thank you. So yeah, we again, this discussion is going really well, and we would like to continue, but for best interest of time, we are really apologize to stop here. And here I would like to transfer it to Manali. She's gonna tell us about our next event, which is Sci-ROI recruitment event a bit. So Manali, if you want to start.
Thank you, Shubhadeep, and thank you to all our panelists for having such an engaging discussion. As you can tell from the overflow of the questions in the chat box as well as the Q&A box, and thank you for answering to each one of them. With that, I'll quickly just mention a little bit about our next initiative. So we are going to have a virtual recruitment drive in the coming month, and the registration is actually open right now. So anyone who is currently outside India and actively working in a STEM related field can apply. You can go to our website and check out the different universities and institutes that have signed up for the recruitment drive. There are currently 10 of them. And you can register and see what positions they have available. And to know more about the drive, we are going to have an informational session, a very informal one, Q&A this afternoon. So it will be at, Shubhadeep, if you want to move to the next slide.
Yes.
This will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time in US, and we will be talking about the whole process, the timelines, and the institutes and the job positions they have. So again, anyone who is currently outside India and would like to transition back to India with a position in hand, please do apply. And I have posted the registration link for the Zoom session today at 2 p.m. in the chat box. So please do register and join us. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhadeep.
Thanks, Manali. I would like to bring here Dr. Ansari to say last few words about our leadership team, and to give the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to all of you. There are many, many more questions. I can see that. We can try and have a blog or something of that sort to answer some of these really thoughtful questions that the audience is posing, and the questions that are coming up from the discussion. So having said that, let me thank everybody on this panel for taking the time on a Saturday to come and talk to the diaspora, to aspiring students and postdocs. Given the situation in India right now, the carnage that we are seeing, your time is greatly appreciated. I thank all the panelists for doing this. Many of you, as Mrinali was saying, I have met during my time with Sci-ROI, with WinStep, and during my sabbatical at NCBS in 2012. So again, as the point was being made, establishing a network, you may already have one, just activating it, recognizing and, maintaining, nurturing it is important. And thank you for sending that message, because we don't usually do this. Even though we do have networks, we don't usually pay attention to how to nurture them and grow them. So that was an important message. And all the other things that I've heard over the last hour have been just wonderful life lessons that can be applied to a variety of different paths that young, talented people might choose to embark on. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your advice and the sincerity and the thoughtfulness of your advice. So this is for the panelists. I learned listening to some of the things that were discussed today. And then I should like to thank the organizers, right? The Sci-ROI team that does this voluntarily. They all have high pressure positions that they're all trying to build their careers, and yet they take substantial amount of time, and volunteer to put together these events, to be able to help their peers, to be able to help each other with the hope of making a difference. So I can only, I have no words to properly express my gratitude to this team, right? And you've seen how beautifully they've done this. I had very little input. And you see Shubhadeep, you see Manali, you see Prakriti, you see Madhumati, and in particular, you see this artwork from Atul. You can see the creativity just exploding. In addition to their, attention, their hard work, their ability to network and organize these things and pull together this large group of people. They're doing so creatively and trying to do this in as effective a way as possible. So thank you so much to the Sci-ROI team and people who feel like something was left or missing. As I always say this, rather than complain, as we are again taught to do back home, right? Point out all the things that could have been done better. I invite you to be part of the solution, right? Reach out to the Sci-ROI team and say what you might want to have seen, on this and how you might do this. So bring your problem formulation and problem solving skills to this team and add and contribute in a meaningful way. So I invite everybody who's listening and feels like their questions weren't answered or something could have been done better to join in. And I invite all of you to express your gratitude and thanks to the team and the panelists in independent emails and LinkedIn outreaches, etc. For all the work that has been done by everybody, the panelists as well as the organizers. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be a part of this and to learn from everybody, who's here. And with that, I hand it back to Manali and Shubhadeep. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'd like to end our webinar. If you have any questions or anything you want to learn more about us, please follow our social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Slack. It was really a great discussion, and we can probably end it here. Thank you again. Maybe we can give a virtual clap to each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for organizing and inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
All the
you.
best.